To Our Friends by the Invisible Committee. Translated by Robert Hurley. There is no other world, there's just another way to live. Jacques Mazarin. The insurrections have come, finally, at such a pace and in so many countries since 2008 that the whole structure of this world seems to be disintegrating piece by piece. 10 years ago, predicting an uprising would have exposed you to the snickers of the seated ones. Now it's those who announce a return to order who make themselves look foolish. Nothing more solid, more self-assured, we were told, than the Tunisia of Ben Ali, the busy Turkey of Erdogan, social democratic Sweden, Ba'athist Syria, Quebec on tranquilizers, or the Brazil of beaches, the Bolsa Familia, and peacekeeping police units. We've seen what followed. Stability is finished. In politics, too, they've learned to think twice before awarding a AAA. An insurrection can erupt at any time, for any reason, and lead anywhere. The ruling politicians walk among the abysses. Their own shadows appear to threaten them. Que se vayan todos was a slogan. It's become a common conviction, the basso continuo of the epoch, a rumble passing from voice to voice, then lifting up like an axe when it's least expected. The cleverest of the politicians have made it into a campaign promise. They don't have any choice. Incurable disgust, pure negativity, and absolute refusal are the only discernible political forces of the moment. The insurrections have come, but not the revolution. Rarely has one seen, as we have seen these past few years, in such a densely packed time span, so many seats of power taken by storm, from Greece to Iceland. Occupying plazas in the very heart of cities, pitching tents there, erecting barricades, kitchens, or makeshift shelters, and holding assemblies will soon be part of the political reflex, like the strike used to be. It seems like the epoch has even begun to secrete its own platitudes, like that all cops are bastards, or ACAB, which a strange internationale emblazons on the rough walls of cities, from Cairo to Istanbul, and Rome to Paris or Rio, with every thrust of revolt. But however great the disorders in this world may be, the revolution always seems to choke off at the riot stage. At best, a regime change satisfies for an instant the need to change the world, only to renew the same dissatisfaction. At worst, revolution serves as a stepping stone for those who speak in its name but only think of liquidating it. In places, France for example, the non-existence of revolutionary forces with enough confidence in themselves clears the way for those whose profession is precisely to feign self-confidence and offer it up as a spectacle, the fascists. Helplessness is embittering. At this point, it must be admitted that we revolutionaries have been defeated. Not because since 2008 we haven't achieved revolution as an objective, but because, under a steady barrage of obscurantism, we've lost sight of revolution as a process. When we fail, we can blame the whole world, making up all sorts of explanations, even scientific ones, based on 1,000 resentments, or we can question ourselves about the toeholds which the enemy may have within us that determine the non-accidental, repeated character of our failures. We might inquire, for example, as to what remains of leftism among revolutionaries, and whether it disposes them not only to defeat but also to a nearly general hostility. A certain way of asserting a moral superiority which they haven't earned is doubtless a quirk inherited from the left, as is the presumed ability to decree the right way to live, the way that is truly progressive, enlightened, modern, correct, deconstructed, and undefiled. A claim to which anyone coming under its summary banishment among the reactionaries, conservatives, obscurantists, narrow minds, bumpkins, fogies, will respond with thoughts of murder. Far from creating a distance, the heated rivalry of revolutionaries with the left only keeps us moored to its ground. We should cast off. Since the coming insurrection, we've gone to the places where the epoch was inflamed. We've read, we've fought, we've discussed with comrades of every country and every tendency. Together with them, we've come up against the invisible obstacles of the times. Some of us have died, others have seen prison. We've kept going. We haven't given up on constructing worlds or attacking this one. We've returned from our stays abroad with the certainty that we weren't living through erratic, separate revolts that were isolated from each other and would still need to be connected. This is what news reporting, constructs, and dramatizes in its calculated management of perceptions, being the work of counter-insurrection, which begins at that minute scale. We are not contemporaneous with scattered revolts, but with an unparalleled global wave of uprisings that intercommunicate imperceptibly. Moved by a universal desire to be together that only a universal separation can explain. By a general hatred of the police that expresses a lucid refusal of the general atomization which the police oversees. The same anxiety is visible everywhere, the same deep panic, provoking the same upwellings of dignity and not indignation. What is happening in the world since 2008 isn't an incoherent series of crazy outbursts occurring suddenly in hermetically sealed countries. It's a single historical sequence unfolding in a strict unity of place and time from Greece to Chile. And only a distinctly global perspective can capture its significance. We can't leave it to the think tanks of capital to spell out the practical implications of this sequence. However localized it may be, every insurrection gestures beyond itself. It contains something global from the outset. It raises us together to the level of the epoch. But the epoch is also what we find deep within us, that is, when we're willing to descend that far, when we immerse ourselves in what we're experiencing, seeing, feeling, perceiving. There's a way of knowledge in this, and a code of action. There's also what explains the underground connection between the pure intensity of street combat and the unalloyed self-presence of the loner. The epoch must be sought deep within each situation and deep within each person. That is where we meet up, where real friends are found scattered over the globe, but walking the road together. The conspiracy theorists are counter-revolutionary in one respect at least. They reserve the privilege of conspiracy exclusively for the power elite. While it's obvious that those in power scheme to preserve and extend their positions, it's no less certain that there's conspiracy everywhere. In building hallways, at the coffee machine, in the back of kebab houses, at parties, in love affairs, in prisons. Through capillary channels and on a global scale, all these connections, all these conversations, all these friendships are forming a historical party in operation. Our party, as Marx said. Confronting the objective conspiracy of the order of things, there is a diffuse conspiracy of which we are de facto members. But the greatest confusion obtains within it. Everywhere it turns, our party stumbles over its own ideological inheritance. It gets caught up in a whole tangle of defeated and defunct revolutionary traditions, which demand respect nonetheless. Like any advertising slogan, the catchphrase, "We are the 99%, owes its effectiveness not to what it says but to what it doesn't say. What it doesn't say is the identity of the powerful 1%. What characterizes the 1% is not their wealth. In the United States, the wealthy are far more than 1%. It's not their celebrity. They tend to be discreet, and nowadays, who doesn't have a right to their 15 minutes of fame? What characterizes the 1% is that they are organized. They even organize in order to organize the lives of others. The truth of this slogan is quite cruel, and it's that the number doesn't matter. One can be 99% and still be completely dominated. Conversely, the collective lootings of Tottenham are a sufficient demonstration that one ceases to be poor as soon as one begins to get organized. There is a considerable difference between a mass of poor people and a mass of poor people determined to act together. Organizing has never meant affiliation with the same organization. Organizing is acting in accordance with a common perception, at whatever level that may be. Now, what is missing from the situation is not people's anger or economic shortage. It's not the goodwill of militants or the spread of critical consciousness or even the proliferation of anarchist gestures. What we lack is a shared perception of the situation. Without this binding agent, gestures dissolve without a trace into nothingness, lives have the texture of dreams, and uprisings end up in school books. The daily profusion of news, whether alarming or merely scandalous, shapes our conception of a generally unintelligible world. Its chaotic look is the fog of war behind which it is rendered unassailable. Its ungovernable appearance helps to make it governable in reality. There is the ruse. By adopting crisis management as a technique of government, capital has not simply replaced the cult of progress with the blackmail of threatened catastrophe. It has arrogated the strategic intelligence of the present, the general assessment of the operations that are underway. This move must be countered. As far as strategy is concerned, it's a matter of getting 2 steps ahead of global governance. There's not a crisis that we would need to get out of, there's a war that we have to win. A shared understanding of the situation cannot emerge from one text alone, but requires an international discussion. And for a discussion to take place, statements need to be offered, this being one. We have subjected the revolutionary tradition and positions to the touchstone of the historical situation and sought to cut the 1,000 ideal threads that keep the Gulliver of revolution attached to the ground. We have groped for the passageways, the gestures, and the thoughts that might allow us to extract ourselves from the impasse of the present. There's no revolutionary movement without a language that can capture the state we find ourselves in, as well as the fissure, a possibility, running through it. What follows is a contribution to its elaboration. To that end, our text is appearing in 8 languages and on 4 continents at once. If we are everywhere, if we are legion, then we must now organize ourselves worldwide.